If you love to drink wine, pay attention. Our friends at Bright Cellars curate wines from all over the world and specifically match them to your palate. They are experts on finding unique, hidden gems from small vineyards, so you'll be able to try new wines you've never tasted before. All you need to do is take their quick and simple 7-question quiz so they understand your taste preferences. That's it, guys. Incredible wines, personalized to your exact preferences, will be delivered directly to your door in eco-friendly packaging. Each box is completely unique to your taste palette, meaning no box is ever the same. My wife has fallen in love with Bright Cellars. She's been using the wine education card that comes with each bottle to pair the wine with dinner. If you're new to wine, their wine wisdom cards will teach you how to store and open your wine, keeping it tasting fresh longer. Here's what's in our latest box, guys. We're doing steak for dinner tonight. This is a red wine called Stone Lantern. If you're ready to discover wine you love, here's an offer that you can't refuse. Bright Cellars is offering 60% off their first 4-bottle box. That's 4 bottles for just $38. Just click on the link in the description to get this special deal. The disaster known as Triller is now complete. I've got to give these guys credit in one regard, which is this show was far less painful than the previous. Far less painful. First off, it all fit into a reasonable window of 3 hours. And I don't know where exactly that sat, but I know I'm close, and 3 hours is definitely on the long end. You want to get that right around that hour, 20-minute mark. But it still wasn't 7 hours like the previous disaster. They still forced you to watch something you didn't want to watch. And a promoter will never, ever not make this same mistake when he's new in the business, which is to bring in other markets and other demographics and think that that's somehow going to help. If there was no music at all, Triller would have saved a lot of money and they would have done the exact same number of buys. That's the part where they have this wrong. If you are ever in a meeting, and I digress, but I'll leave you with one final thought. If you are ever in a meeting and one of the guys on the marketing team uses the word synergy, if he just says it, if the word synergy comes out of his mouth, thank him for his time and get a new marketing guy. Synergy is not real. Synergy does not work. Synergy is a theory. It is an ideology. There is no proven example anywhere in the world where you bring in from different markets to grow your own. It doesn't work that way. It sounds like a great idea. It will continue to be pitched. People will continue to bring it to the table. They will continue to write books. They will continue to do lectures and seminars at colleges. It doesn't work. If you're doing a boxing show, do a boxing show. But I still got to give these guys credit. I mean, it was short. It was not profanity-laced. It was not disgusting and disturbing. In the world of Triller, they moved in the right direction. They really did. Now, you take a look at the co-main event. The co-main event, I believe, was the main event. I believe that was the main attraction. Anderson versus Tito. I got to give Tito a lot of credit. I got to give him a lot of due. So he comes out, he's scared to death. And you can understand that, right? You can understand the fear that you would have going into combat with another man. Particularly when you're taking on someone, Anderson Silva, who many people have called the greatest of all time. And now you're doing it much closer to his realm, which is boxing. And you're Tito, you've never boxed. So you're going to have a fear and an anxiety just to go into the sport that you know very well, which is MMA. Now you're going and doing something different. So this is the spot that Tito's in. Now, quitting in MMA is something you can do and something that you, the viewer, sees regularly. But quitting or taking a dive is very different than a fixed fight. When Pride used to fix fights, they would control that, but they would only go into one locker room. They would only tell the guy that was going to lose, we want you to lose, and here's how we want it to happen. They would never tell the other guy, which is why you didn't need Emmy award-winning actors to pull this off. The celebration looked very genuine and authentic because the winner thought it was. He had no idea that somebody else was visited or somebody else was paid or cash from the Yakuza literally was determining the outcome of the match. It's one of the reasons they pulled it off so successfully for so long. Nobody outed him. Only me. In all fairness, I get all the credit for bringing that to your guys' attention. People didn't know Pride was fixed, including the guys that were champions and going on runs. They didn't know. I've never been part of a meeting. I've never been part of a fixed fight. That's right. Fixed and a dive are totally different. A dive happens when only one side knows. Now, in the illicit description that I just spelled out, that's not what happens every time you see a dive. When you have a guy that wants out, he will formulate, and sometimes he doesn't even know that before the match. He's in the match and realizes, my toast is burnt. I need to get out of here in one piece. That's largely where the rear naked choke comes in. Turn over, give him my back, rear naked choke. Darren Till just did it, just by a perfect example. Darren Till wanted out of that fight. He knew the position. He knew what he needed to show. I held on just long enough, tap and get out. When Tito took the dive, okay, when you have that anxiety and that fear and fight or flight sets in and you need a way out, there's not a ton of ways to get it in boxing. You're going to have to go down to a punch. You cannot rear naked your way out of this thing. You cannot guillotine your way out of this thing. So it's tough. So what do? You wait until that first punch comes and you go down. Now you do need to understand from this perspective, Tito fought a much smaller man than Tito has ever fought in his life. Tito has never fought a man as small as Anderson Silva. Tito did not take that hard of a punch. Oh, and by the way, he took it with a 16-ounce pillow. He was out. Never in Tito's life, even when Chuck Liddell knocked him out back then, never in Tito's life was he out, was he snoring. So he's snoring. He is out. I mean, he sold this thing, pro wrestling stuff. It was great. The way he went down, it was great. It looked very real. The second they say 10, boom, he's awake, smile on his face, and everything's fine. Okay, a little bit of an overactor there. Where you have the downside that isn't considered is Anderson doesn't know that's what Tito did. Anderson doesn't. So now Anderson's walking around today going, my God, I got power. My God, these hands of mine. One time I could put this great big guy, didn't even make the weight class, said he was 240 pounds, I put him down with one shot, even with a pillow on my hand. One shot. Boy, whew, I got to be careful. That's one of the things. You'll see kids that watch MMA, and they're not aware that the rear naked choke is just the way out of a fight. And then they'll go spend all their time in a jiu-jitsu gym paying money every month to go learn this devastating move known as a rear naked choke. So things get a little bit weird and they get a little bit confusing. Now, where I said I got to give Tito credit. If you go and do a dive, okay, if you ever lose a fight for any reason where you were one punch and it put you to sleep, you couldn't get up. Not MMA where you cover up like a ball and the referee jumps in and he swarms and you say it was an early stoppage and I was getting ready to go. You're asleep, which is the act that Tito pulled. If you do that, your career is now done, right? That's the trade that you're making. I got out of here tonight safely and I get a paycheck. I get to go home in one piece. But my time in this sport is now done. Nobody will ever come back to see a guy who has to snore for 10 seconds over one punch from a much smaller man, and that man is wearing a pillow on his hand. I'm done. They're also then going to notice what you did. That unlike any reaction you've ever had in your entire professional career, you did not just go down, you went out. For 10 seconds. As soon as they said 10, you jumped up and everything was fine. But you're now done. And people are going to start picking that apart. And people are going to start looking at this. Unless you instantly change the topic. Which is what Tito did so well. Tito goes right and calls out Logan Paul. But he also lays out his reasoning. I lost and you lost. Let's bring two losers to the table. Now, by policy, that is generally the way the sport works. Two guys that won their last fight each other. Two guys that lost their last fight each other. It's not a rule, but it is generally the way it works. You would never advertise that. You're now demoting. You're not promoting. You're coming out and saying, I suck, you suck. Let's bring our suck together and see if we can make some money. Fine. I don't have a problem that Tito did it. And I thought his timing was very smart. Change this topic. Change the topic as to how you, against a much smaller man, had the worst knockout of your career with one punch 21 seconds in while he's got a 16-ounce glove on his head. You got to change the topic. The problem that Tito ran into, where you sit back and you stare at it and go, wait a minute, what just happened, is that it is functionally incorrect. Logan did not just lose his last fight. Logan's last fight was with Floyd. Those two agreed if it goes the distance, Logan wins. That was their agreement. But you can even set that aside and just go by what the commission and what the official organizing body said, which was that it was a draw. You don't have a third option there. I believe Logan won. Logan and Floyd made that deal. We, the viewer, are supposed to recognize it out of sportsmanship. I do. Logan won. That's probably not going to hold up in court, right? The event organizing committee really has the final say, regardless of what these two worked out ahead of time, and that was that it was a draw. That's not what Tito said. Tito said Logan lost. Oh, my goodness. What happened here? What happened here? The timing of it, great. Get off the dive, get that whole thing, the whole acting, the whole, just let it go. But Anderson doesn't know what's what. So now Anderson thinks he's got like some kind of dangerous power with that right hook. The whole thing is an absolute mess.